National Black Women's Breastfeeding Week, and I figured I want to do a segment on, I've been sitting on this segment for a while, just how women who choose or can't breastfeed, the shining of the light on them. And so this video is for us women who didn't take the breastfeeding journey and we took the exclusively pumping route when it came to feeding our babies. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who don't know me, welcome. For those of you who already know me, welcome back. Thank you for joining me for another video. I'll start a little story time before I get into some tips. So today's tips, it can work for people who are exclusively pumping and also who are breastfeeding, because they correlate. Cyrie did not latch on when he came out of the womb, and like most babies, I know it's something that it's a learned behavior. Some don't get it right away. I knew I had a mission to breastfeed. My mom breastfed us. My grandmother breastfed. So I had a mission to become someone who breastfed their child. And so, you know, that first day or so in the hospital, I felt a little bit, I was determined to make sure that he was able to get this milk by any means. So nurses would help me, the lactation specialist on staff would help me. I would go to classes every day, the days that I was there, and they would kind of give me some tips on getting the latch on. He did latch on a little bit while we were still at the hospital, but he wasn't getting enough of the milk that they wanted him to get. So what we did was they made me feed him out of a cup because they didn't want him to get oral aversion and not want to breastfeed when I got home, because if I fed him from a bottle in the hospital, it would have kind of confused him. So we did cup feed him for the first couple of hours of him being around. Right away I was like super engorged and I had a great supply. That was never the issue. It was just he wasn't latching on. So I would hand express, they called it, where you actually are like bringing the milk out using your hands. I would hand express it into the bottle, and then I would feed him either via the cup or through a syringe. So those were like my first 2 days in the hospital doing. And then when I got home, when I got sent home, I was suggested to look into a lactation specialist. So my insurance thankfully covered it. In the meantime, I was still just doing the hand expressing when I was home because he still was not latching on. He would latch on for like a little bit, and then I would hand express, and then I would feed him that way. And then my lactation specialist, she came about within a week of him being home, and she did like an assessment on his latch and just to see how he did it. And what she did was she weighed him before and after. So she weighed him before, she told me to breastfeed, and then she weighed him right after to see how much milk he actually got from me. So what she realized is that he was getting milk from me, but it wasn't like to his satisfaction. So she then suggested that he did in fact have a tongue tie, which was also like discouraging him from kind of latching on. It was a little harder for him, and I'll explain that what a tongue tie is. And usually with a tongue tie, the parent has an option to go get the under the tongue clipped, which we ended up doing like a couple weeks later, which he didn't feel anything, and that in hopes would help him to have a better latch. She also mentioned that although I would breastfeed him, I still would have to pump after to allow him to get the rest of the milk. So I would still have to put the milk in the bottle and feed it to him. So I felt like I was just doing double work. Like I would have to breastfeed and then I would have to pump. So I thought long and hard. I said, you know what? I kind of wasn't really into pumping because I felt like I wouldn't have that bond with my child if I didn't breastfeed. And I've kind of, it lasted for about a day. Like I felt a little discouraged that, you know, like why me? I wasn't like, you know, they made breastfeeding seem like it was so easy. And look at now, my child has his tongue tie. I don't have the, you know, my nipples were kind of inverted. So that was also like a struggle for him. And so I did some research and I realized that there was actually a community of people who just pumped and they call themselves exclusive pumpers. So from that day on, I became an exclusive pumper and I had to live with it, and I was secure with the fact that I was able to still feed my child, and I actually was able to solely feed him on breast milk for a whole year. So I pumped for a year, and it is possible. I probably could have kept going after the year, but I was just like ready to be done. So I was a pumper for a year. So today I'm going to give you some tips on how you can keep your supply up and what you can do to, if you become an exclusive pumper, how you can make your life a little bit easier. These things I wish that people told me when I was pumping for a whole year. It's a little long. I'm gonna try to go through it quickly, and I might skip around here and there, but I want to try to give you as much information as I can. Okay, and I have my phone for my notes. Tip number 1 is to drink lots of water. Now, you thought you were drinking water when you were pregnant. Now this is really where you need to drink the water. Like, you gotta remember, breast milk is made up of mostly water, so you have to really make sure you get that water in. So I was drinking like almost a gallon a day. If you feel like water is not your thing, find something close to water. So like if you want to even make like iced tea, unsweetened, just to get that liquid in, because again, remember, yeah, breast milk is looking for that water. I would say no more than a gallon a day. You don't want to over drink water either. So I would just say make sure you get that water in. Next tip I'm gonna say is tea, which I mentioned before, but like make sure you're getting that hot tea also. And there's a really good tea called Mother's Milk, which I'll link below with the exact name of it. That is really helpful. I was drinking like almost 3 cups of tea a day in addition to my water. It's made of like really good things that will help with the production of your milk. And yeah, so tea is your friend also. 2 supplements that I took every day also that really helped was an herb called Moringa and another herb called sea moss. And these 2 things were really helpful. So the Moringa, it came in the powder form. It's very bitter, so just get ready for that. But what I would do is I would sprinkle some in like my smoothie or like my oatmeal, and that would be how I would get it down like once a day. And then the sea moss, the same, you can put that in like a smoothie also. So I would try to get Moringa, I would take daily. Sea moss I would take like every few days. I didn't take that every day, but that also helped to produce that milk. Another milk production was different foods. The foods I would say are chocolate, surprisingly, and not just any chocolate. I would say dark chocolate. That was like really good. String beans are really good to help produce your milk, and oats. So if you are into oatmeal, I love oatmeal. Make sure you get your oatmeal in. Those are all milk producers. I did do the lactation cookies for a little bit, but they can get expensive. They are very tasty, but they can become expensive. So if you feel like you want to splurge a little bit and have a treat, I would suggest getting the lactation cookies because they were very good. Another tip is to make sure you have the right flange size. This is something that you could either find out from, like I found out my flange, my exact one, from my Lactation Specialist. She was very helpful. So make sure you find that out because that really can determine your flow of the milk if it's too big or too small, it's like counter, it doesn't work really well. So figure that out early. Next tip is to make sure you have something like a lubricant for your flange. So what I would use is coconut oil. That would help. That really, because remember that suction can become very irritable, so to speak. And so you want to make sure that you allow something to create, so it's not too much friction between the pump and your breast. So I would use coconut oil. They say you can also use the breast milk. So if you know, whatever that, like let down a little bit of that you can use that to wipe the inner rim of the flange, and that would help with the friction against the breast. Create a consistent pumping schedule. So again, once you find out you're a pumper, like I knew that was my destiny for this child, and I ended up coming up with a realistic schedule. I put it in my phone so my alarm would go off every 2 to 3 hours. I would say every 2 or 3 hours is like a realistic schedule, because remember, you have to mimic what the child is going to do, you know? And that comes to my next tip. Have more than one pump. I have 4 pumps at all times. I had one in my home that I kept in the bedroom. I had one that I kept in the car. I had one for work, and I had like a hand one that if I was at like either in different parts of the home or if I ran out. But make sure you have more than one pump. Make sure you change out your pump parts. They say about every 4 to 6 weeks you should be changing your pump parts. Sometimes they get holes in them. The tubing can get like really raggedy. So what I did was I bought like a few at a time. Like I would always go buy a few at a time and just have pump parts on deck. And if I felt like the pump wasn't really doing the job that I really wanted it to do, I would then just switch off the pump part. Something that took my pump game to the next level, once I found out I was gonna be a pumper, was to get a pumping bra. Now, originally I made my own, and it actually worked. It was decent. But then I purchased one, like a really good one. I think I got it from Target, and took my pump to the next level. It really just like made sure the pump was secure on your breast, and I feel like I got a lot more when I had a pumping bra as opposed to just like free holding the pump or whatever. So make sure you get a pumping bra. If you are creative, you can do it yourself. Just make sure it's really secure around the bra area, because like the tighter it is, the more of that the more suction it will get. If that makes sense. So get a pumping bra. Oh, middle of the night pumps. Even if your child is sleeping through the night, you have to get up and do that pump. That's very important. So Cyrie was sleeping through the night at about close to 2 months old, but I would still set my alarm. So sorry mamas, you can't sleep through the night, baby. Get up and pump, get that session in, because again, that is a really important session. That's a really important session. It holds it. Another thing that would help you is to pump until you are empty. Now I know this sounds cliche, but this, imagine that you're feeding your child. So like your child is gonna eat until they're like the breast milk is done at that moment. And again, you're never really 100% empty, but like really make sure you get what you gotta get out, because like remember your body is producing based on how much you pump. So say you only pump for 5 minutes every single time, your body's gonna start to tell yourself, oh, okay, all she needs is really 5 minutes of milk every single time. If you pump for 20-30 minutes, yeah, it sounds like a long time, but your body will then start to now produce that milk. I was up to pumping I would get about 50 ounces a day. And I know like some people will probably think that's a little bit, but I felt like for me, like I had a really great stash at all times. Cyrie was fed well. He we were drinking like almost 30 ounces a day. So for me, 50 ounces a day was actually really good. Like I still had like enough to stash every day. Like every day I was probably stashing like 20 ounces, 15, 20 ounces. So, but that went from, because I was actually pumping for a great amount of time. So don't just think like, oh, I'm gonna pump for 5 minutes and then move along. No, really make sure you get that pump going. And that's that. Believe it or not, my hand pump, I would get a lot more milk out of than an electric pump, because I think it was because of the fact that you were really like working your breasts the way you should be. So if you have the patience, try hand pumping every now and again. Even if it's like once a day, hand pump. Another tip would be to always have a stash of milk. And I'll probably insert some pictures of my stash, my milk stash. I would just use my regular freezer. I didn't get a second freezer. I probably could have used one, but I didn't. The importance of a stash though while you're pumping, like if you're a pumper, is say, you know, you go out, or say you're pumping and the child needs to eat, your baby needs to eat, pull from the stash if you need to, you know. And maybe I'll do a separate video on the stash, and just like, I feel like this video could go on for like an hour, but I'm gonna cut it off in a second. But just really make sure you keep your stash in a neat format and you keep it up to date. You date everything, maybe, and like make sure you use your supply. So don't just like stash a bunch of milk and just have it. Like really just start, like you should use it too. So what I would do is I would maybe like once a day, once I like my stash was like really high up there, I would then take out like a stash milk every day and then like add new ones in. So don't just keep adding, and then you're gonna have a whole bunch of milk. So really just make sure you use that stash too at the same time, you know? Last tip I'm gonna say is to join a support group. I found that there was a whole community of women, of exclusive pumpers, women who chose, like some women choose not to breastfeed, and I thought it was just, I never even heard about the term until I became one. And so find that support group if you're maybe on Facebook, they have, you know, or if you find like one of your community of women who like on that same mission as you. But that was really helpful. Like I just learned so much from this group that I was in, from the other mamas. Like they would really just like give you the real deal of what, you know, was going on. Thank God I never had mastitis, because of the fact that like I was so consistent with my pumping. And so like even something like that, like I learned so much because other women did get it, and they would show you like the signs of like, oh my God, I'm about to get it. So I would then assess like, what am I doing everything correctly, and then I would try to like change up if I wasn't, you know. So really join a support group, like that was really helpful. It helped me to learn a lot. Even if you decide to breastfeed, like find a breastfeed. I was a part of a breastfeeding support group also, but I was more active in the pumping group because that's what I was. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it was helpful. If you have any other tips on pumping or breastfeeding, please feel free to leave it below in the comments. Please also remember to like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications so that you don't miss anything. Please remember to also check out my other YouTube channel, Meatless Mondays, and learn how to eat. We give you some great tips on just healthy eating, veganism, gluten-free way of life. So head over to there also and do the same. I will see you guys soon. Bye.